A loyal dog can wait longer than a man can lie to himself. By sunrise on the third day, everyone at Camp Hawthorne has heard about the white K9 outside the commander's office. Ghost has been sitting on the same 12-inch strip of gray stone for 71 hours and 46 minutes, his pale coat dulled by rain, his amber eyes fixed on a walnut door that has not opened for him once. He does not pace. He does not whine. He does not bark at the Marines passing through the administration hall in polished shoes and dress blues. He simply waits, straight-backed and silent, like a sentry assigned to a post no one else remembers ordering him to hold. Outside, folding chairs stand in perfect rows beneath a wide Virginia sky. A brass band warms its instruments near the parade field. Red, white, and blue bunting moves softly in the morning wind, and the scent of wet grass drifts through the open entrance. In less than 15 minutes, Colonel Nathaniel Reeves will walk onto that field, salute the flag one final time, and surrender command of the base he has led for 11 years. Inside his office, cardboard boxes line the walls. Framed photographs have been taken down, leaving pale rectangles in the wood paneling. His retirement speech rests beside a silver pen, untouched. Yet beyond the door, Ghost remains. The dog's ribs rise and fall beneath his damp fur. A stainless steel bowl sits 6 feet away, filled with clean water he has barely touched. Beside it lies a tray of chicken offered by the K9 unit. He has not looked at either. Chief Warrant Officer Daniel Price stands near the stairwell, arms folded across his chest, watching the dog with the quiet concern of a man who has spent 20 years learning the difference between stubbornness and purpose. He needs rest, says Dr. Emily Carter, the base veterinarian. Her voice is low, careful. She kneels several feet from Ghost, a soft restraint lead coiled in one hand, and a small medical case beside her boot. His temperature is dropping. We can calm him, move him somewhere warm, and bring him back when the ceremony is over. Daniel does not answer right away. Overhead, the fluorescent lights hum. Somewhere down the hall, a clock marks each second with a dry mechanical click. Ghost's ears twitch at every sound except the voices around him. He's been offered warmth, Daniel finally says. He keeps choosing the door. Emily looks at the brass nameplate mounted at eye level beside it. Colonel Nathaniel Reeves, commanding officer. The letters shine beneath the hallway light. Fine scratches mark the lower edge of the plate, 3 close together, then 2 below them. No one knows when they appeared. He may be grieving, she says. The word settles heavily between them. Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks has been missing for 3 days. Elijah, a 37-year-old black Marine with a calm voice, broad shoulders, and a scar through his left eyebrow, is Ghost's handler, partner, and the only person on base the dog follows without hesitation. His radio was found near a flooded service road in Sector 9. Search teams worked through 2 nights of cold rain before the unstable ground forced Colonel Reeves to suspend the operation. At 8:10 the previous evening, Elijah Brooks was officially listed as missing and presumed unable to return without assistance. No one says the harsher possibilities aloud. They do not need to. Ghost came back alone. Just before midnight on the first night, he appeared at the west gate soaked in red clay, a torn orange cord caught beneath his harness and dark mud packed between his paws. He passed the kennels. He passed the clinic. He passed the barracks where Elijah's empty bunk waited beneath a folded blanket. Then he entered the administration building, climbed the stairs, and sat outside the commander's office. He has not left since. Emily opens the medical case. The quiet snap of the latch turns Ghost's head for the first time that morning. Daniel straightens. Easy boy. Ghost looks at the veterinarian, then at the closed door. Outside, the band begins the opening notes of the Marine Corps hymn. Footsteps approach from the private hallway behind the office. Colonel Reeves is coming. Emily reaches slowly for the restraint lead. Before her hand closes around it, Ghost rises. His legs tremble, but he stands with the dignity of a soldier called to attention. The hallway falls still. Daniel takes 1 step forward. Ghost lowers his head and reaches beneath the front of his harness. For 3 days, no one has noticed the small object hidden under the wet white fur at his chest. He grips it gently between his teeth, turns toward the office door, and releases it onto the stone. The object strikes the floor with a thin metallic sound. Once. Then it rolls in a slow half circle and stops against Colonel Reeves's polished shoe as the door opens. Reeves looks down. The color leaves his face. At his feet lies a broken emergency whistle, its silver casing scratched, its orange cord torn clean through. Colonel Reeves knows that whistle. Every Marine in Elijah's unit knows it. Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks wore it beneath his collar on every search mission, and he had once told them he would only remove it for one reason: if he needed Ghost to carry a message home. Colonel Reeves does not bend to pick up the whistle immediately. For a few seconds, he only stares at it while the distant brass music continues beyond the windows, bright and ceremonial, as if the morning has failed to notice that something inside the building has changed. Ghost stands before him with his head lowered, breathing hard. Rainwater darkens the stone beneath his paws. Daniel Price watches the commander's face and sees recognition arrive before words do. "He brought it to you," Daniel says. Reeves slowly kneels. The silver whistle is cold against his fingers, and a thin line of red clay fills the groove along its side. Etched near the mouthpiece are two small letters, worn smooth from years of use. Elijah Brooks had carved them himself during his first month with the K-9 unit. Not as decoration, as a promise that anything placed in Ghost's care would always find its way home. 3 mornings earlier, before the clouds gathered over Sector 9, Elijah had stood in the K-9 training yard beneath a pale autumn sun, fastening Ghost's working harness with the same care another man might use to button a child's winter coat. Elijah moved with quiet precision. He was tall, broad across the shoulders, and steady in the way he carried himself, but there was gentleness in his hands whenever they touched the white fur along Ghost's neck. The scar through his left eyebrow gave him a stern look from a distance. Up close, his dark brown eyes told a different story. They carried patience, old sorrow, and the kind of humor that never needed to be loud. Ghost watched every movement. His amber eyes followed the buckle, the leash, the orange emergency cord. When Elijah checked the whistle beneath his collar, Ghost lifted one paw and placed it against Elijah's wrist. "Not yet," Elijah murmured. "You only carry this if I cannot." Ghost tilted his head. Elijah smiled. "And I plan on doing all the talking today." Daniel had been standing near the equipment shed with a clipboard tucked under his arm. "That dog has better judgment than half the officers on this base," he called. Elijah looked over his shoulder. "Only half." Daniel laughed. "The other half are still under review." Colonel Reeves crossed the yard a moment later, dressed in field uniform rather than the formal blue coat waiting for him in his office. He had come to inspect the search exercise before the morning briefing. Ghost noticed him first. The dog straightened, ears high, then glanced at Elijah as if asking whether the commander deserved his attention. Elijah gave a small nod. Ghost sat. Reeves stopped beside them and looked down at the dog's pale coat shining in the sunlight. "He always wait for permission?" Reeves asked. "Only when he thinks the person giving it knows what he is doing," Elijah replied. Daniel lowered his clipboard to hide a grin. Reeves raised one eyebrow, but the corner of his mouth moved. "And what happens when he disagrees?" Elijah tightened the final strap on the harness. Ghost does not ask twice. Reeves looked from the dog to the Marine. "Then I had better listen the first time." It was said lightly, almost carelessly, the way people speak when they do not know a sentence will return to them later carrying far more weight. Elijah rested one hand between Ghost's ears. For a brief moment, the training yard grew quiet around them. Wind moved through the pines beyond the fence. Somewhere near the motor pool, a truck engine turned. "Over." Ghost leaned into Elijah's palm, not seeking praise, only contact. The two of them had been partnered for 4 years, long enough that commands had become almost unnecessary. Elijah could change direction with a shift of his shoulder. Ghost could warn him with a single pause. They trusted what the other noticed. More important, they trusted what the other could not explain. "Sector 9 is old ground," Elijah said, looking toward Reeves. "The maps do not match the terrain anymore. The drainage routes were changed after the last storm." Reeves nodded. "Engineering reviewed it. They reviewed the road, not the tunnels." Elijah's voice remained respectful, but firm. "There are service passages beneath the northern ridge. Some are not marked on the current plans." Reeves glanced toward the administration building where another meeting waited, along with a stack of retirement documents and 11 years of unfinished decisions. "Submit the request after the exercise. We will schedule a survey." Elijah gave a short nod. "Yes, sir." Ghost looked west. The wind had changed. A layer of gray cloud was beginning to gather over the hills, thin at first, almost harmless. Elijah followed the dog's gaze and rested his fingers on the broken whistle that still hung whole beneath his collar. Then he looked down at Ghost. "Stay close today," he said softly. Ghost rose without being told. Back in the hallway, Colonel Reeves closes his hand around the whistle and hears his own words from that morning return through the silence. "Then I had better listen the first time." He looks at Ghost, at the exhaustion in the dog's trembling legs, and realizes the white German shepherd has not spent 3 days waiting for Elijah to come back. He has spent 3 days trying to finish what Elijah sent him to do. The exercise begins under a sky that looks too calm to be trusted. By 8 in the morning, Elijah and Ghost are moving along the northern edge of Sector 9, with Lance Corporal Mason Reed following 20 feet behind them. Mason is 23, eager, careful, and new enough to the unit that he still checks every instruction twice. The three of them are assigned to inspect an old service route running beneath a wooded ridge, a place where pine roots have pushed through cracked pavement and rainwater has carved narrow channels through the red Virginia clay. Ghost leads without pulling. His white coat passes between the dark trees like a strip of winter light, his nose low, his ears turning toward sounds the men cannot hear. Elijah watches him more than he watches the trail. That is how their partnership works. Maps show where people believe the ground should lead. Ghost tells him where it actually does. For the first half-mile, nothing feels wrong. The air smells of pine bark, wet stone, and distant rain. A few yellow leaves drift across the path. Mason speaks quietly about the ceremony planned for Colonel Reeves, wondering whether the commander will miss the base after retirement. Elijah glances back at him. "A place like this does not leave you just because you leave it." Mason smiles. "That sounds personal, Staff Sergeant." "Most true things are." Ghost stops. Not slowly. Completely. One front paw remains lifted above the ground. Elijah raises a closed hand, and Mason falls silent. Ahead, the service road curves toward a narrow concrete opening almost hidden behind vines and fallen branches. According to the current map, the opening should not exist. A metal sign hangs crooked beside it, its lettering faded until only the word "authorized" can be read. Ghost steps toward the entrance, then turns his head west. A low wind moves through the trees. The scent changes. Cold moisture rolls beneath the warmer air, carrying the mineral smell of disturbed earth. Elijah looks up. The harmless gray layer they saw from the training yard has thickened into a dark ceiling stretching across the ridge. Weather report said the storm would stay south, Mason says. Elijah studies the slope above them. Weather does not read reports. He reaches for his radio and contacts the operations center, giving their position and describing the unmarked passage. Static answers first. Then Daniel Price responds, his voice broken by distance. "Hold position. Engineering is checking the records." Ghost walks to the concrete wall and presses his nose near a rusted ventilation grate. His breathing slows. He listens. Elijah kneels beside him and places 2 fingers against the ground. At first, there is only the faint tremor of wind through metal. Then comes a sound from somewhere below. 3 soft knocks. A pause. 2 more. Mason hears it too. Pipes shifting. Elijah does not answer. Ghost turns toward him, amber eyes steady. The dog has heard a pattern, not noise. Daniel returns over the radio. The passage was sealed 19 years ago. No active route is listed beneath that ridge. Elijah looks at the orange emergency cord mounted beside the entrance. It runs through a narrow gap in the wall and disappears into darkness, likely connected to an old manual release. "The map is wrong," he says. Thunder rolls beyond the trees, still distant but moving closer. Daniel orders them back to the main route until the weather passes. Elijah acknowledges the command. He does not argue. He marks the location, photographs the entrance, and turns the team east. They travel less than 200 yards before the rain begins. It arrives without warning, hard enough to blur the trees and turn the trail slick beneath their boots. Water rushes along the shallow channels in the road. Ghost keeps close to Elijah's left leg. Mason shields the radio beneath his jacket as another burst of static fills the speaker. The slope above them releases a deep, groaning sound, not violent, but heavy, like the earth settling under a weight it can no longer carry. Elijah looks uphill. Move to higher ground. They climb toward a stand of older pines, but the red clay gives way beneath their feet in long sliding sheets. A fallen tree blocks the eastern path. The western route disappears behind a curtain of mud and rain. There is no panic in Elijah's voice when he redirects them toward the concrete passage. Only decision. The tunnel entrance is our nearest shelter. Ghost reaches it first. The old metal door has shifted, partly closed, leaving a gap barely wide enough for a man to pass. Elijah pulls the orange cord. It moves 6 inches, then jams. Mason helps him, but the mechanism holds. Ghost pushes through the narrow opening and barks once from inside. Elijah removes the emergency whistle from beneath his collar and looks at the dog. Rain runs down his face. You know what to do if we lose the route. Ghost stares at him. Elijah loops the orange cord through the whistle, fastens it beneath the dog's harness, and points toward the base. Command. Ghost does not move. Elijah places one hand against the dog's chest. That is an order. For one painful second, Ghost remains exactly where he is. Then training overcomes devotion. He turns, slips into the rain, and disappears between the trees. By midnight, soaked in red clay and carrying the broken whistle against his heart, he reaches Camp Hawthorne alone. He passes every place where comfort waits. He climbs the administration stairs. He finds the closed walnut door. And he begins to wait. By dawn, the rain has weakened to a cold mist, but Ghost has not moved from the walnut door. Water beads along his white coat and gathers at the tips of his fur before falling onto the gray stone. The administration building begins to wake around him. Lights click on behind frosted glass. Coffee warms in paper cups. Marines cross the hallway carrying maps, radios, and the weary silence of people who have spent the night searching without finding what they came for. Some pause when they see him. A few speak his name. Ghost does not look at them. Daniel Price arrives just after 6 with mud on his boots and exhaustion drawn across his face. He kneels beside the dog and studies the torn orange cord beneath the harness, but Ghost turns his shoulder away before Daniel can touch it. Easy boy, Daniel says. We are still looking. At the sound of Elijah's name spoken by someone near the stairwell, Ghost's ears move once, then settle. Daniel expects him to stand. He does not. That is the first thing no one understands. A grieving dog should search for the familiar voice. He should follow the scent of Elijah's field jacket when Daniel brings it from the canine unit. He should press his nose into the fabric, pace the hall, or pull toward the exit. Instead, Ghost smells the jacket once and looks back at the commander's door. To the people watching, it appears almost cruel. To Ghost, it is obedience. At 7:15, Major Claire Donnelly enters with a folder held tightly against her side. She has spent the night coordinating teams across the northern ridge. Her dark hair is pinned beneath her cap, and rain has left a thin line of moisture along the shoulders of her uniform. The lower service road is flooded, she tells Daniel. The eastern slope is unstable. We found Staff Sergeant Brooks's radio near the runoff channel, but no tracks beyond it. Daniel looks toward Ghost. The radio could have washed there. It could have, Claire says. Or he could have dropped it before the ground shifted. Neither possibility is spoken with certainty. That is what makes both of them heavy. The radio is placed inside a clear evidence pouch and carried past Ghost on the way to operations. The dog lifts his head. For one brief second, hope moves through Daniel. Ghost smells the air, then turns away from the radio and looks toward the west windows. Claire notices. He knows it is Elijah's. Yes, Daniel says. Then why is he ignoring it? Daniel watches the white dog settle his chin between his paws. Maybe he is not waiting for Elijah. Claire follows his gaze to the closed office. Colonel Reeves has been at the command center since midnight. The dog may associate that room with the last place he saw him. Ghost does not confuse rooms with people. Trauma changes behavior. Her words are reasonable. That is why everyone accepts them. By mid-morning, Dr. Emily Carter examines Ghost from a careful distance. She notes his shallow breathing, chilled pause, and refusal to eat. A young Marine leaves roasted chicken beside him. Another brings Elijah's blanket. Ghost accepts neither. Emily replaces the water bowl with a fresh one and steps back. After several minutes, Ghost rises, walks 6 feet, and drinks 3 measured mouthfuls. No more. He returns to the door and sits in the exact place where the edge of his right paw touches the brass threshold. He is conserving himself, Emily says. Daniel crouches near the bowl. For what? No one answers. At noon, the search teams return to Sector 9. Helicopters remain grounded because of low cloud cover so Marines move on foot along the safer trails, calling Elijah's and Mason's names into the wet woods. Their voices travel between the pines and disappear. They find a torn map case near the creek, 2 footprints under a ledge, and a strip of reflective tape caught on a branch. Each discovery creates a small wave of hope. Each one fades when it leads nowhere. Inside the administration hall, time passes through the sound of boots, telephones, and the old clock above the stairwell. Ghost remains still. At 4 in the afternoon, the bell at the west gate rings as a supply truck enters the base. Ghost rises so quickly that the water beneath him ripples. His ears point toward the sound. His body leans west. Daniel sees it. Then the bell stops, and Ghost sits again. An hour later, it happens a second time. The same turn of the head. The same fixed attention. He is hearing something, Daniel says. Claire stands beside him with her arms folded. The gate bell. Maybe what it represents. The western route back to Sector 9. Daniel looks at the torn orange cord, or the direction he came from. As evening settles, Colonel Reeves returns briefly from the command center. He enters through the private stairwell and does not see Ghost on the other side of his door. The dog hears him. His breathing changes. He places one white paw on the threshold and scratches the wood 3 times. Then he waits. 2 more scratches follow. A pause. Then 3. Daniel freezes. Ghost lowers his paw and listens. Nothing happens. Reeves leaves through the private corridor without opening the door. Ghost returns to his post, but Daniel keeps staring at the marks. 3, 2, 3. Not panic. Not grief. A pattern. And somewhere beneath the northern ridge, hidden beyond old maps and rain-darkened earth, the same rhythm is moving through a rusted pipe. Daniel Price does not sleep that night. At 2 in the morning, he sits alone in the K9 unit records room beneath a single desk lamp, surrounded by training logs that smell faintly of paper, dust, and old leather. Rain taps against the narrow window in an uneven rhythm. 3, 2, 3. He tries not to hear Ghost scratches in every drop. On the desk lies Elijah Brooks's field notebook, its corners softened by years of use. Most of the pages contain ordinary details: feeding schedules, scent drills, route times, medical checks. Elijah writes with a steady hand and wastes few words. Then, near the back, Daniel finds a section marked Emergency Return Protocol. The first line makes him sit straighter. If separated beyond visual recovery, Ghost will return to command authority. Not the kennel. Not the medical station. Not the nearest handler. Command authority. Daniel reads on. The dog has been trained to identify the highest-ranking officer available, maintain position, and refuse transfer of any object carried from the field until direct recognition is established. A single word activates the protocol. Command. Daniel closes his eyes. Elijah had used that word at the tunnel entrance. Ghost had not abandoned him. He had been sent. By 6 in the morning, the second day begins beneath low clouds and a colder wind. Daniel enters the administration building carrying the notebook under his arm. Ghost is still beside the door. His white coat is no longer bright. Dust and dried clay have turned it the color of winter ash. Yet when Daniel says the word command, the dog raises his head at once. His ears lift. His eyes move to the brass nameplate. Daniel feels the truth settle into place. You are not guarding this room, he whispers. You are waiting for the man whose name is on it. Major Claire Donnelly arrives moments later with updated search maps. Daniel shows her the notebook and explains the protocol. She reads the page twice, then looks through the window toward the gray morning outside. This proves why he came here, she says. It does not prove where Staff Sergeant Brooks is. Ghost came from Sector 9. So did the floodwater carrying the radio. Her voice is calm, but fatigue has sharpened its edges. The northern slope moved another 18 inches overnight. Engineering will not clear a team to enter the old tunnel zone without a confirmed route. Daniel opens the map across a side table. The route may not be on this version. That is exactly the problem. Claire places one finger over the shaded area beneath the ridge. We have no reliable layout, no stable access point, and no way to know whether those passages are open. Sending more people underground on instinct could create another rescue. Daniel looks toward Ghost. It is not only instinct. Then give me coordinates. He cannot. The silence between them is filled by the soft mechanical ticking of the hallway clock. At 8, Dr. Emily Carter returns with 2 assistants and a padded transport stretcher. Ghost's temperature has fallen again. His paws tremble when he stands. Emily speaks gently to him, then to Daniel. He cannot remain on this floor another day. We need to move him somewhere warm. Daniel kneels and touches the side of Ghost's neck. This time, the dog allows it. His pulse is quick but steady. We are not taking the whistle, Daniel says. Only him. Emily nods. They fasten a soft lead to the harness. Ghost rises without resistance and walks beside them down the hall. One step, then another. His nails make faint clicks against the stone. For nearly 30 feet, he follows. Marines move aside to let him pass. Some watch with relief, believing the long vigil is finally over. At the top of the stairs, Ghost stops. Emily applies no force. Come on, boy. Ghost looks back toward the office. Daniel sees the change before anyone else. The dog is not confused. He is measuring distance. An assistant takes one careful step forward. Ghost slips backward, turns beneath the loose lead, and runs. Not wildly, not in fear, with purpose. He crosses the hallway, returns to the walnut door, and sits beneath the brass plate. Then he raises one paw and places it against Colonel Reeves's name. No scratching this time. No signal. Only contact. He lowers his head until his forehead rests against the metal, as though confirming the identity of the one person who must receive what Elijah sent home. The hallway grows quiet. Even Claire stops beside the stairs. Daniel opens the notebook again and reads the final line of the protocol aloud. The object is not the message. The dog is. Ghost closes his eyes, but he does not lie down. Outside, the wind carries the west gate bell across the base. His ears rise at the sound. Daniel turns toward Claire. He is telling us 2 things. Who must listen, and where we must go. Claire looks at the map in her hands, then at the closed office door. Colonel Reeves has not authorized a return to Sector 9. Daniel watches Ghost hold his place beneath the commander's name. Then maybe he has not heard the request yet. Colonel Reeves hears the request at 7:40 in the morning, when Daniel Price enters through the private corridor carrying Elijah's notebook and the broken whistle in a clear evidence pouch. The commander is alone among half-packed boxes, standing beside the window in his white dress shirt, while the formal blue coat waits across the back of a chair. Beyond the glass, Marines arrange the last rows of seats for the retirement ceremony. A brass instrument sounds one uncertain note, then falls quiet. Reeves does not turn when Daniel closes the door. You should be with the K9 unit, he says. Ghost should be in the clinic, Daniel replies. He refuses to go. Reeves looks toward the walnut door, separating them from the hallway. On the other side, faint claws shift against stone. He has been through a traumatic event. He is following a command. Daniel places the notebook on the desk and opens it to the emergency protocol. Reeves reads without touching the page. His eyes stop on the words highest-ranking officer available. The room seems smaller after that. Outside, wind presses rain against the window in long silver lines. Why was I not shown this yesterday? Reeves asks. Because we thought he was grieving. And now I think he has been waiting for you to admit that he knows something we do not. Reeves turns away from the notebook. For 11 years, men and women have brought him reports, forecasts, and recommendations. Every decision has arrived in a folder, signed and numbered. Ghost has brought mud, a torn cord, and silence. It should not feel like evidence. Yet it does. Daniel removes the broken whistle from the pouch and sets it beneath the desk lamp. Red clay fills one side of the casing, but something pale clings inside the narrow seam near the mouthpiece. He uses the tip of a cotton swab to lift a trace of it. The powder is chalky, almost white. That was not on the service road, Daniel says. Reeves leans closer. Limestone dust. The old ventilation tunnels beneath the North Ridge were lined with it. Reeves knows before Daniel finishes. Years earlier, Sector 9 had been used for storage and emergency communications. The tunnels were removed from active maps after repeated flooding. Their entrances were marked sealed, their inspection postponed again and again. One request had reached Reeves's desk 6 months earlier. Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks had submitted it after Ghost alerted near a collapsed grate during another training exercise. Reeves walks to a box beside the wall and pulls out a thin folder. The paper inside is clean, official, and painfully familiar. Tunnel Survey Request. Northern Sector. submitted by Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks. At the bottom, beneath the recommendation, is Reeves's own signature beside the words deferred pending budget review. He sits slowly. He warned me. Daniel says nothing. Reeves reads Elijah's final note. Current maps may place personnel at risk during severe weather. Recommend immediate physical survey. The commander had planned to approve it after retirement funding was settled. Then meetings multiplied. The ceremony drew closer. The request disappeared beneath more urgent matters. Now a white dog is waiting outside his door with the proof of what delay can cost. The search teams followed the marked drainage routes, Reeves says. If Elijah entered one of those tunnels, they have been looking on the wrong side of the ridge. Daniel points to the torn orange cord beneath Ghost's harness in a photograph taken at the west gate. This is not standard marking tape. I checked the maintenance archive. The emergency doors in Sector 9 used orange pull lines for manual release. Reeves studies the image. 6 inches of cord remain knotted around the whistle. The end is frayed from tension, not cut. Elijah had tried to open a door. When it failed, he tied the whistle to the line and gave both to Ghost. A location and a message carried together. Why did Ghost come back? Reeves asks, though the answer is already written in the notebook. Because Elijah could not, Daniel says. And because he needed someone with authority to reopen the sector. The clock on the wall reaches 8. In 1 hour, Reeves is expected on the parade field. In 3 hours, command transfers to Major Claire Donnelly. The retirement orders are signed. The speeches are printed. Every chair outside faces a platform built to honor the certainty of his career. Yet inside the office, certainty has become the one thing he no longer possesses. A soft scraping comes from the hallway. 3 strokes. A pause. 2 more. Then 3. Reeves closes the folder and looks at the door. What does that pattern mean? We do not know. Daniel's voice lowers. But Ghost repeats it whenever he hears movement inside this room. Reeves crosses the floor and places one hand on the brass handle. Before opening it, he glances at the blue coat, the silver pen, and the speech about duty resting beside them. Then he looks down at Elijah's request, still bearing the decision that kept the tunnels unexamined. Cancel the first formation, he says. Daniel waits. Reeves opens the door. Ghost raises his head. His exhausted amber eyes meet the commander's for the first time in 3 days. He does not bark. He does not move. He only waits for the man behind the nameplate to finally understand. Reeves steps into the hallway and kneels before him. Show me what I missed, he whispers. Ghost looks west. Ghost does not need to be told twice. The instant Colonel Reeves rises, the white German shepherd turns toward the western stairwell, but his first step nearly fails beneath him. Daniel reaches for the harness, and Ghost allows the support without surrendering the lead. His body is exhausted. His purpose is not. Reeves looks down the hallway where officers, medical staff, and young Marines have gathered in silence. Beyond the windows, the retirement ceremony is ready. Flags lift in the wind. The brass band stands beneath the gray sky. Hundreds of chairs face an empty platform. Major Claire Donnelly approaches from the operations room with a map in one hand and a weather report in the other. Sir, engineering still. Considers the northern ridge unstable. Reeves faces her. What would you need to enter safely? A confirmed access point, a structural team, medical support, and authority to reopen a restricted sector. You have the last 3. Claire holds his gaze. We do not have the first. Reeves turns toward Ghost. Yes, we do. The words move through the hall with the weight of a door unlocking. Claire looks at Daniel, then at the broken whistle in Reeves's hand. No one speaks for several seconds. Outside, the band director raises his baton. The first note of the ceremony sounds across the parade field. Reeves removes the silver command insignia from the collar of his formal coat, which an aide has carried downstairs for him. He closes it in his palm and steps into the center of the hallway. Suspend the ceremony, he says. The aide hesitates. Sir, the guests are already seated. Then ask them to remain seated. Reeves looks toward Claire. Open Sector 9. Deploy the structural rescue unit, 2 medical teams, and every available communications specialist. Claire's expression tightens with concern. On what basis? Reeves lifts Elijah's broken whistle. On the basis that one of my Marines sent a message, and we failed to read it. The hallway becomes completely still. Reeves looks at Ghost, whose amber eyes remain fixed west. Ghost leads. For the first time in 3 days, the dog barks. One sound. Clear. Certain. Then he moves. Marines open the double doors, and cold morning air enters the building carrying the smell of rain and wet grass. Ghost descends the steps with Daniel beside him. Reeves and Claire follow. Across the parade field, conversations fade as the white dog crosses in front of the empty platform. His coat is stained with clay. His legs tremble. Yet every step points toward the west gate. The band lowers its instruments. Veterans, families, and active-duty Marines rise from their chairs without being asked. No announcement explains what is happening. None is needed. They watch their commander leave his own retirement ceremony behind to follow a tired dog toward the hills. Vehicles are ready within minutes. Ghost refuses the rear compartment of the lead truck until Daniel places Elijah's field jacket on the floor. Then he climbs inside and rests his nose against the fabric. The convoy passes through the west gate and turns onto the service road. Rain begins again, light at first, tapping against the windshield like fingertips. Reeves rides in silence beside Claire. On the map between them, Sector 9 is a blank patch crossed by faded lines and old warnings. If the tunnel is not there, Claire says quietly, we will lose the safest part of the day. Reeves watches the white shape in the vehicle ahead. And if it is there, we have already lost 3 days. The paved road ends after 4 miles. From there, the teams continue on foot beneath dripping pines. Ghost moves slowly but never hesitates. He ignores the marked trail, turns north at a split no current map recognizes, and follows a shallow channel of red clay beneath the trees. Daniel notices the dog checking certain landmarks, a broken fence post, a stone culvert, a pine bent by lightning. Ghost is not searching. He is remembering. Half a mile later, they reach the flooded service road where Elijah's radio was found. Claire expects Ghost to stop. He walks past it without looking down. Another quarter-mile brings them to the fallen tree that once blocked the eastern path. Ghost circles it, climbs a narrow rise, and disappears behind a wall of hanging vines. Daniel follows and finds him standing before a concrete opening almost buried in mud. An orange cord hangs from a gap beside the metal door. Its end is torn. It matches the piece fastened to the whistle. Access point confirmed, Claire says into her radio. Structural engineers move forward, testing the ground and securing the slope. Ghost presses his nose against the rusted ventilation grate. Then he lowers one ear toward it. Everyone falls silent. Rain touches leaves. Water moves through a ditch. Far beneath the ridge, something answers through the metal. 2 faint knocks. A pause. Then one more. Daniel's breath catches. Reeves steps closer, afraid even to breathe. The sound comes again. 2 knocks. A pause. 1. Not shifting pipes. Not rain. A human rhythm. Ghost closes his eyes and places one white paw against the concrete. For 72 hours, he has carried the message alone. Now, at last, the men around him can hear it too. The structural team moves with the patience of people who understand that hope can be as fragile as old concrete. They secure the slope with steel braces, clear mud from the door, and test every section before placing weight against it. No one raises a voice. Even the radios seem quieter beneath the rain. Ghost remains beside the ventilation grate, one white paw resting against the cold surface as if he can hold the distant rhythm in place. 2 knocks. A pause. One more. Daniel kneels beside him and presses his ear near the rusted metal. We hear you, he says, though he does not know whether the men below can hear anything in return. Stay with us. Colonel Reeves stands several feet back with Elijah's broken whistle closed inside his hand. The sharp edge presses into his palm, but he does not loosen his grip. Every delayed report, every postponed inspection, every reasonable decision now feels different under the weight of those 3 faint sounds. Claire coordinates the rescue route, while engineers attach a manual winch to the old door. The orange release line has jammed deep inside the wall, hardened by rust and years of neglect. When the winch begins to pull, the metal gives a low groan. Ghost rises. His ears point forward. The opening widens 1 inch, then 2. Cold air escapes from the darkness carrying the smell of wet limestone, old iron, and trapped earth. A rescue specialist shines a light inside. The beam reveals a narrow passage sloping beneath the ridge. Water runs along one side in a shallow stream. White dust coats the floor. It matches the powder found inside the whistle. The passage is open, Claire says. Daniel reaches for Ghost's harness, but the dog is already moving. Hold him, the lead engineer warns. We have not cleared the tunnel. Ghost stops at the threshold. He does not pull. He only looks back at Reeves. The commander understands. He stays with the lead team, he says. On a safety line. Daniel fastens a long line to the harness, and 4 rescuers enter behind the dog. Reeves and Claire remain near the entrance while communications cable is fed into the passage. The tunnel is barely 6 feet wide. In some places, the ceiling drops low enough that the team must crouch. Their lights move across cracked walls, old pipes, and faded arrows painted decades ago. Ghost walks slowly, nose close to the ground. He pauses at every junction, listens, then chooses. 100 feet inside, the tunnel divides. The marked route bends east. Ghost turns north toward a passage almost hidden by fallen boards. Daniel studies the old map clipped to his vest. There is no northern branch. The engineer touches the limestone wall. There is now. They follow. The knocking grows clearer. 2 sounds. Silence. 1. Ghost answers with a soft breath, not a bark. Around the next curve, the tunnel narrows beneath a section where the ceiling has settled. A steel support beam has slipped across the passage, leaving a low space beneath it. Beyond the beam, a dim light flickers. Elijah, Daniel calls. For one long second, there is nothing. Then a tired voice returns through the darkness. Took you long enough. Daniel closes his eyes. The rescuers smile without speaking. Ghost lowers himself and crawls beneath the beam. On the other side, Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks sits against the wall with his field jacket wrapped around Lance Corporal Mason Reed, who is awake but weak from the cold. Elijah has one shoulder pressed beneath a loose support brace, helping keep it steady while Mason rests beside him. His face is pale with exhaustion, but his dark brown eyes are clear. Ghost reaches him and stops one step away. Training holds him there. Elijah looks at the dog, and something inside his guarded expression breaks open. He cannot lift his arm very far, so he turns his hand upward on the stone floor. Here, he whispers. Ghost crosses the final distance and places his head into Elijah's palm. The tunnel becomes quiet except for water, breathing, and the faint sound Elijah makes when he feels the familiar white fur beneath his fingers. Good boy, he says. You found command. Ghost closes his eyes. Behind them, the rescuers begin stabilizing the passage and preparing Mason for the careful trip out. Daniel crouches beside Elijah. Why did you stay this deep? Elijah looks toward the younger Marine. Mason could not make the climb. I was not leaving him. His gaze returns to Ghost. Neither was he. Daniel tells him about the 3 days outside Reeves's office, the untouched food, the West Gate bell, and the broken whistle delivered at the moment the commander opened his door. Elijah listens without surprise. I told you, he says softly. He does not ask twice. When the path is secure, Mason is guided out first. Elijah follows with help. Ghost walking so close that his shoulder brushes Elijah's knee at every step. Near the entrance, daylight appears as a pale silver opening through the rain. Reeves waits there without his formal coat, mud covering his polished shoes. Elijah sees the commander and tries to straighten. Reeves raises one hand. Save your strength, Staff Sergeant. Elijah looks at the whistle in his hand. He brought the message? Reeves glances down at Ghost. No, he brought the order. Then the white dog steps into the morning, and the Marines gathered outside fall silent as 2 missing men finally return from the earth. The rain stops before the convoy reaches Camp Hawthorne, and by the time the vehicles pass through the West Gate, a narrow band of sunlight has opened above the trees. No one plays music. No one gives a speech. The Marines who had been waiting beside the parade field stand in silence as Elijah Brooks and Mason Reed are carried toward the medical clinic, wrapped in warm blankets and surrounded by people who had refused to stop hoping. Ghost walks beside Elijah's stretcher, his white coat still marked with clay and limestone dust. Each time a medic turns a corner, the dog adjusts his pace without being told. He watches Elijah's hand. He listens to every breath. Only when the clinic doors close does Ghost finally allow Daniel Price to guide him into the examination room next door. He drinks slowly, eats a small portion of warm food, and falls asleep before Emily Carter finishes placing a blanket beneath him. For nearly an hour, he does not move. His body has reached the end of what discipline can carry. Yet, even in sleep, one ear remains turned toward the wall separating him from Elijah. 3 days later, morning light fills Elijah's hospital room at the Regional Military Medical Center. Mason is recovering 2 floors below and has already asked when he can return to duty. Elijah rests against raised pillows, his left shoulder supported, and a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside the bed. The scar through his eyebrow catches the pale light when he turns toward the door. Ghost enters first. His coat has been washed clean, though a faint reddish stain remains near one paw where the clay settled too deeply. He crosses the room with quiet dignity, stops beside the bed, and waits. Elijah opens his hand. Ghost places his head into it. No command is spoken. None is needed. Daniel stands near the window while Colonel Reeves enters behind him wearing a dark civilian jacket. Without the formal uniform, Reeves seems older and somehow lighter. He carries no medals, no folder, and no prepared remarks. Only the repaired emergency whistle, now threaded onto a new orange cord. He places it on the table beside Elijah's coffee. Maintenance said the casing could be saved, Reeves says. Elijah runs one thumb over the scratches in the silver. Some things look better after they have done their job. Reeves glances at Ghost. He nearly brought the entire base to a halt. Nearly, Elijah asks. Daniel hides a smile. Reeves pulls a chair closer, but does not sit immediately. For a moment, the former commander studies the black Marine before him, the white dog at his side, and the quiet bond that accomplished what maps and reports could not. I owe you an apology, he says. Elijah's expression remains calm. For suspending the search? For giving you a reason to need one. Reeves explains that the tunnel inspection has been approved. Every abandoned service route beneath Sector 9 will be surveyed, marked, and added to the emergency maps. The old northern passage will remain closed until it is fully restored. Elijah listens, then looks down at Ghost. That sounds expensive. It is. The budget office will complain. They already have. What did you tell them? Reeves finally sits. I told them I had learned the cost of waiting. The room grows still. Outside, tires move softly across wet pavement. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattles past and fades. Elijah touches the new cord around the whistle. Daniel said that was your last command. Reeves nods. I ordered everyone to follow Ghost. Elijah looks at him for several seconds, then shakes his head gently. No, sir. That was not the important part. Reeves waits. You trusted him. The words carry no accusation. That makes them land more deeply. Reeves looks at Ghost, who has closed his eyes beneath Elijah's hand. I should have trusted you first. Elijah considers this, then offers the smallest smile. He has always been more convincing. A week later, Reeves returns to Camp Hawthorne one final time. The ceremony is not repeated. There is no band and no row of chairs. Major Claire Donnelly receives command in a quiet morning formation, then walks with Reeves to the administration building. The walnut office door stands open. His nameplate has been removed, but the maintenance crew has preserved the small marks along its lower edge. 3 scratches. 2 scratches. 3. Claire asks whether he wants the brass plate as a keepsake. Reeves looks at the worn metal and shakes his head. Leave it here. Without your name. Especially without my name. The plate is mounted beside the doorway again. Beneath it, a smaller line is engraved into the brass. Listen before you lead. Months later, Elijah returns to light duty with Ghost walking at his left side. They pass the office one quiet afternoon while sunlight stretches across the stone floor. Ghost slows beside the old scratches. He touches them once with his nose, then looks up at Elijah. Elijah rests a hand between the dog's ears. Beyond the open door, voices pause to hear a junior Marine finish speaking before a senior officer answers. Ghost continues down the hall. He no longer needs to wait there. The message has already been received, and the door has learned to remain open.